Flying in a stolen airplane, Colton's mission was to escape the United States into Canada. But as he quickly glanced at the gauges, oh my god, the plane's running out of gas. But he couldn't land at the airport. There'd be federal agents there waiting to arrest his ass. So he finds a flat patch within the mountains, lines up the plane, puts down the flaps, prays to God, and bam. Now, thank God he'd actually made it out alive, because Colton didn't have his pilot's license. He'd actually never even flown an airplane, because Colton was 16 years old, stealing over 6 airplanes while committing 67 felonies in 3 different countries on the run from the FBI for 3 years. Colton Harris Moore is the most badass kid outlaw I've ever read about. Hold that seat tight, because it's gonna be a wild ride. Now, Colton Harris Moore was never the cool kid in school. The bullies picked on him, nobody talked to him, and all he wanted was what the other kids had: a clean pair of shoes, a simple haircut, and parents who just gave a shit. But his mom was an alcoholic. His dad never paid the child support. He lived in a trailer park and was forced to scrounge for food. But one day, as the bullies were picking a fight with Colton, the new kid in class stands up to all of them. A kid that had just got out of a 2-year sentence from juvenile hall, Harley Ironwing Davidson. Now, just like Colt, Harley's dad was out of the picture, his mom was a junkie, but Harley had the trappings of wealthy parents: a new pair of shoes, a laptop, and hell, even an iPod. You see, Harley at the age of 16 had served 2 years for residential burglary, and they were all stolen. Now, Colton had stolen food from the neighbors, but to have everything a kid in the early 2000s would want for free, it was enticing, and Harley was going to teach him. Meeting at the cul-de-sac at midnight, Harley shows him how to pick a lock, find the hidden spare keys, and lays down some basic rules. Don't rob somebody's house if you know who lives there, don't turn on the lights, if you ever get caught or spotted, just run, and never feel guilty. As per Harley's own words, remember, this ain't hurting nobody, everything I've stolen is insured. They'll just reimburse it through their insurance and get something even better. Wise words from someone who's clearly dealt with an insurance company. Breaking into dozens of homes over the courses of weeks, Colton's thrill was being able to just eat a good meal, play some video games, and take the spare change you found as lunch money. Now, Colton knew this was bad, but then again, he wasn't hungry anymore, and life was good. But you gotta ask, where were the police in all of this with kids robbing dozens of homes? Well, the San Juan Islands, where they're from, has extreme wealth division. 1 in 3 homes in the area are vacation homes, meaning that's a lot of empty houses all year round. The perfect place for residential burglary. But for Colton back at home, life was actually getting worse. His mom is now physically addicted to alcohol. He had tried to check her in the rehab. She said no. He had brought AA handbooks for her. She burned them in front of his face, and Child Protective Services were called dozens of times after physical fights broke out between the two. All he wanted was his mom to get her act together so he could be a normal kid and not forced to scrounge for food. But no. She would throw him out in the streets to survive on his own, and he would set up a tent in the middle of the forest, and there you go, at the age of 15. Now, as the neighbors noticed their fridges being raided of frozen pizza and tendies, the murmurs of a mysterious boy who only broke in just to eat spread fast across the island. But other neighbors noticed a lot more than just frozen tendies gone missing. At the crack of dawn, the FBI bust down the door at his mom's house. They had a warrant in hand for Colton Harris Moore, and it wasn't for stealing frozen tendies, but for committing identity theft. His mom was shocked. No way it could have been sweet little Colt. He didn't even live at the house anymore. The FBI called BS on that, searched the home, and yeah, Colt really didn't live there. Now, tracking a scent with bloodhounds, they go deep into the woods and come across a tent stuffed at the brim. As they unzip the door with their pistols drawn out, piles of stuff falls out. We're talking laptops, boxes of jewelry, telescopes, credit cards, driver's licenses, checkbooks, and it all linked back to Colt. But Colt himself was nowhere to be found. Once the trail had gone cold, the feds wrapped it up and called it a day. He was still hiding in that forest. Now, the next morning, a handwritten note shows up on his mom's doorstep. Cops are here. Everything's on lockdown. I'm leaving for Weechi, won't be back. Cops want to play, huh? Well, it's no little game. It is war. Colt had watched the whole thing go down from far away. Now, although the sheriffs there locally had no resources to actually catch him, the FBI now would bring in professional manhunters, made multiple warrants for his arrest, and placed wanted posters all over town. And Colton knew he couldn't go back home. He was truly on his own. And for a town that didn't have a lot going on, everyone was focused on trying to catch him. Now, he started stealing cars and boats and purchased lockpicks and night vision goggles with the stolen credit cards. He would hide out in the empty homes when the FBI helicopters were overhead. The police had pulled up to several homes. He was in the middle of breaking in.
Bro, They'd be the most craziest criminals to be getting caught in a day. How the fuck can they kill a fucking trailer park 16-year-old jit, bro?
And managed to escape every time. Homeowners came back to seeing Colt just chilling on their couch, only to vanish out the door the next without a trace. And the local newspaper was listing burglaries by the day for months. So to outrun the FBI with professional manhunters for months at the age of 15, I'm not going to condone it, but that's impressive. But if we're as smart as we think Colt is, he had one nasty habit: leaving the lights on. And when residents noticed the lights on in the one neighbor's house who was gone on vacation, they called the cops. Now, dozens of officers surrounded the home without the sirens and lights. He couldn't run this time, and he had been caught red-handed. Now, at the age of 16, any charges Colton would face
and his OG man said never turn the lights on, bro,
would not show up on his record as an adult. Theoretically, he could still turn his life around. And while his mom often made excuses for his criminal behavior, this time, the kid was going to have to face the music. So Colt pleaded guilty to 3 counts of residential burglary, and with this history of evading the FBI for months at a time, sentenced to 3 years at a maximum security juvenile jail. And the entire town could sleep at night. Now, while in juvenile jail, Colt once again was the weird kid. Kids pushed him around, stole his commissary money, but these weren't just kids this time. They were full-on gang members.
I'm a wigger, so go figure.
So he isolates himself and filled his days reading about flying airplanes and focused on his schoolwork. His grades got better. He did as he was told. He had planned to get a college degree once he got out, and it seemed that with some structure, he was actually going to change for the better. So in 10 months of this good behavior, he was transferred into a fenceless group home, the kid that had outrun the FBI. But now with the freedom to wear the clothes he wanted and be around kids who weren't in there for violent assault charges, Colt was flourishing. And although he still had 2 years left in his sentence, it felt like he was given another chance at life. As the guards did their midnight body count, they noticed the window unlocked. The bed was empty. Colton was missing. He had escaped with an hour head start. Now, front page news striking fear into the locals. Residents were furious.
Oh no,
the kid they'd spent all of his time trying to catch, and to think that he wouldn't escape. I mean, come on. His mom went to the press and pleaded for him to turn himself in, and Colt was left with 2 choices. Now, escaping from juvenile jail could add up to 4 years on top of your sentence, but the police were so desperate to catch him because of the whole goose chase, they publicly said they would only give him an additional 28 days if he turned himself in. So he'd get out at 19, start his life with nothing on his record, or hide his identity with the warrant out for his arrest for the rest of his life. And as a 17-year-old kid now, with his brain not fully developed, the kid kept running. So with the heat on his mom's house, Colt thought maybe his old friend Harley Ironwing Davidson could give him a place to hide out, maybe even some help. But soon he found out that Harley was now in prison. He had tried to steal a 1,000-pound safe from his mom's church. So with nowhere to go, Colt began breaking into homes, purchasing the lockpicks, the night vision goggles with stolen credit cards, all to make his burglaries even easier. And for 3 months, Colt is breaking into dozens of homes, and the police have no idea where he's at. Until the police were in pursuit of a Mercedes-Benz driving 100 miles an hour down the road. Now, the car veered off in the parking lot, crashed into a tree, and when police pulled up, it looked as if the driver had jumped out of the car while it was moving and ran off into the forest. Now, inside the car, they found a backpack that was filled with the stolen credit cards, driver's licenses, night vision goggles, and a digital camera that had these photos on it. It was Colton Harris Moore with that goddamn Mona Lisa smile. Soon the image was on wanted posters all over the county. Now, throughout that summer, hundreds of residents called 911 with encounters and sightings of Colt. He even had encounters with the police, but every time he kept getting away. But how was that possible, you might ask? It's estimated that 80% of all burglaries are committed by people on drugs. But Colt, he was sober. Every house he broke into always had the alcohol untouched. He didn't have a car, so they couldn't pull him over. He lived off of the grid, and most importantly, the kid was young and healthy. But as the legend of Colton Harris Moore grew with his Facebook fan page at 15,000 members, the town was on edge. The gun shop sold out of ammos and shotguns. Security cameras were placed everywhere, and residents assumed every crime in the town was Colt's fault. I mean, a 17-year-old burglar with nothing left to lose? Yeah, that's gonna keep you up at night. Stalking the local airport on the Orcas Islands for days, Colt was hiding out in the forest, watching the takeoffs and landings. He knew when the staff worked, where they would be at, and took action. Before sunrise, he walked up to a brand new Cessna 182 Skyline. He had flown this plane in video games hundreds of times. He knew roughly how to fly it, maybe even how to start it. He found the keys on the seat, read the owner's manual, rolled the plane out to the runway, and without much thought, started the engine and took off. Now, flying into the mountains, Colton couldn't believe it. That adrenaline burst of actually flying a plane without a license. Now, you may wonder, how was this possible? Wouldn't air traffic control see a random plane that never reported itself and maybe think it's a little suspicious? Well, in America, if you don't cross any restricted flying areas and stay under 18,000 feet, you're free to fly wherever the f you want. But you see, in flying, landing is the hardest part. And once Colt looked at the gas gauge and realized he was almost out because he never checked it before he left, he needed to land now. So he finds a flat patch within the mountains, lines up the plane, prays to God, and the landing gear was destroyed. The propeller was twisted up. And once Colt woke up from being knocked out, he threw up all over the plane. After 6 months of no reported break-ins or burglaries within the area, locals thought Colt maybe was done, maybe even dead, but his war against the police was still very on. So arriving in the town 6 months later, he gets into a police car, he steals the officer's cell phone, ticket book, breathalyzer, laptop, and his MP-15 assault rifle with the box of rounds. So far, Colt hadn't harmed anyone physically, but now he was armed. Who knew what he was capable of?
If he gets backed into a corner because of everything that he's done, you know, if he has a weapon, I wouldn't put it past him to use it.
Now, while some saw the act as daring, others loved that a kid was sticking it to the cops, living life on his terms. A Robin Hood that didn't give back to the poor, but instead had a fan club selling merch with his face on it. And Colton made sure to give his fans a great show. So on September 8th, he steals a $250,000 boat and heads towards the Friday Harbor. There, he stalks the local airport and steals a $1 million airplane. This time, he made sure it was filled with gas and crash lands it all the way back on the Orcas Islands. Now, the police knew he was there on the Orcas Islands, maybe at the airport or the dock. Somehow, he gets through the police barricade, steals a twin-engine boat, goes full speed all the way up towards Canada, and illegally crosses the border. So over the course of a week, he commits some more burglaries, steals a couple more cars, and road trips all the way across to Creston, Canada, literally the middle of North America. There, he steals an Escalade and heads down the Bonnevers Ferry in Idaho. Mind you, this is a kid doing all of
steals an Escalade?
Now, the one smart thing Colt never did was fill his car up with gas at a gas station. You know, they have security cameras, they track the cars. Easily, the police could see where you were probably going. So if a car ran out of gas that Colt stole, he would just leave it there, break into another one, and steal that until he got to his next spot. Pretty smart kid, honestly. A day later, he steals another airplane and flies all the way from Idaho back to Granite Falls, Washington.
Bro, why do you say he steals another airplane? Like, this is just GTA, he just hops in that bitch and flies.
He actually lands the plane safely in the middle of the mountains.
Bro, what?
Now, pretty soon, the local hometown once again had a huge burst in burglaries. He's doing the usual, living in the empty vacation homes, eating stolen tendies, and also bringing a ton of heat. You see, aircraft theft is one of the rarest forms of theft in the world. Now, rumors at the time are that it was some rogue pilot who had stolen the plane to go on a quick trip to impress some girl he was seeing, but they couldn't be any more wrong. It was a kid. Now, even with the police swarming his hometown, Colt starts breaking into grocery stores, stealing thousands of dollars in cash, and leaving footprints with the tagging, "See ya." Now, he's doing all of this barefoot, and the media christened him with the name the Barefoot Bandit.
A stolen airplane and grocery store burglary, complete with telltale chalk outlines of bare feet, has folks on Washington State's San Juan Islands worried the burglar known as the Barefoot Bandit has returned.
First, I thought it was a joke.
Police think the burglary is the handiwork Colton Harris Moore. The teen is suspected of stealing airplanes, boats, and luxury cars and breaking into dozens of homes and businesses in the area, only to disappear into the woods without a trace.
Now, people fell in love with Colt. He had a huge fan base. Mind you, it's 2010, the recession's still on, bankers got bailed out, corporations got billions, the common man was kind of screwed out of all of it. So in rejection of all of that, Colt took life into his own hands and was living life on his own terms, outsmarting not only the police and the DHS and the FBI, but the government itself. Though by now, city officials on the island informed all of the residents that there were now dozens of armed bounty hunters stalking the forest looking for Colt, creeping in their backyards, searching in the empty homes, but Colt was already long gone. On the morning of May 30th, 2010, a letter shows up on the front doorstep of an Oregon animal hospital. Drove by, had some extra cash. Please use this money for the care of the animals. Colton Harris Moore, aka the Barefoot Bandit. For his legion of Facebook fans, I gotta say, that's a smooth move. I mean, who could hate a kid that was from a rough home who just loved some animals? But what it really implied was, you can't catch me. Because Colt had stolen a full-on racing boat and drove all the way towards Oregon, where he had talked over the phone with some attorneys about selling the rights to his life story for a potential movie. But people knew the story just couldn't end well. We're talking stolen planes, stolen guns, stolen boats. So another attorney's office comes forward and makes a deal with Colt. Now you see, an anonymous donor said that if Colt turns himself in, Colt would get $50,000 and the attorney's office would represent him at court, all for free. But that deal was to expire within 5 days.
Nigga,
we're talking about a fugitive collecting his own bounty. Unheard of. But 5 days later, not a word from Colt, and that anonymous donor is still to this day unknown. Now, the FBI was showing up to his mom's house every day, searching the home, warning her that harboring a fugitive, it's a felony. But all she wanted to know was her son even alive? And she would fall deeper into the pit of alcoholism. Now, over the course of a week, he starts stealing several more cars and starts road tripping all the way to Yankton, South Dakota. Now, arriving at midnight, he needed a place to kind of hang out. So he cased out several homes in the area until he found the one with no cars in the driveway. He thought if they weren't home by midnight, they were probably gone on vacation. Hungry and filthy, he puts his clothes in the washer at the house. He heats up the oven and makes some frozen tendies for himself. He goes upstairs, gives himself a haircut with the trimmer he found, and he finally hopped in the shower to relax after a long week of road tripping.
Bro, why did Devontae just text me saying, I'm rock and I need a hug? Devontae Sinat. All your friends gay. Bro, that's Cobb brother, bro.
At 3 a.m., the Clark family had come back from a long vacation. With their eyes half asleep, they headed inside the house with their bags ready to just pass out. But something was off. The TV was still on. Jello containers were stacked on the floor. Frozen tendies were heated up. Now, as the dad walks into all of the rooms, he notices at the end of the hallway, the bathroom door is slightly open. And as he reaches out to open the door, it slams shut. The dad, a 340-pound dude, muscles the door open until a naked man covered in lotion sprints towards out the basement. Now the dad's chasing, get out of the house, get out of the house. And by the time he got to the basement with his adrenaline pumping, a red laser pops up on his chest. Colt let it be known that he was armed. Now the dad locks the basement, runs to the car with his family inside, breaking the garage door as he's backing out, and heads over to his neighbor's house to call 911. Now, Colt's freaking out. He doesn't know what to do. His clothes are still in the washer. I mean, he's literally trapped in the basement. Minutes later, as the officers swarmed the house on the lookout for a naked man covered in lotion with a gun, there was no way on God's green earth Colt was going to get out of this one. But once the SWAT team bashed in the door and the K-9s were let loose, and after an hour of searching every nook and cranny of that house, no one was inside. So with the forest close by, bloodhounds and helicopters with thermal cameras are searching all over the area. But Colt had escaped. And this time it was close. Holy. Now you see, Colt had smashed the washer to grab open his clothes, spilling gallons of water into the basement, grabbed his bag, and because he was so skinny, slipped out of the basement window, broke into the neighbor's house, and stole their car keys and dipped out real fast.
This nigga's a menace to society, bro. This nigga's a demon. This nigga's just a demon, bro.
And after the Clark
with a fat ass AR on him, bro. He doing all this with an AR on him, bro.
Family was shown a mugshot of Colton. They confirmed that the naked man with the gun covered in lotion was Colton Harris Moore. Now, while the FBI didn't know exactly where he was headed or where he was, they had a rough idea. Colt loved to steal near small airports. Now, within the week, Homeland Security held meetings with every private plane owner in all of the surrounding states, warning them of the Barefoot Bandit. They told the pilots to lock their planes, make sure they were safe, don't leave the keys on the seat. And Colt actually knew about these meetings because he had saw Homeland Security going around. Now, for a week, Colton was waiting out in the forest near the Monroe County Airport, reading the magazines he took, surviving off the food he stole, and he was waiting to find the perfect plane to escape the country. Now, Colt knew his limits. He would only steal planes that he had flown in video games, which is insane to think about. And on the 4th of July, that moment happened. During the sunrise, Colt snuck into the hangar and rolled out a brand new Cessna 400, about a $700,000 plane, with the keys on the seat. He made sure to fill it up with gas, went through the pilot's checklist, started the engine, took off in the plane, and headed down south. Happy 4th of July. Now, doing the math, the Cessna 400 should be able to go all the way to Cuba on one tank of gas, if there was no crazy winds. Now, Cuba's got its benefits, there's no extradition treaty, and even though Colt didn't speak Spanish, he'd figure it out. But instead of Cuba, he had actually flown towards the Bermuda Triangle, and of course started to run out of gas and needed to land ASAP. Now, flying over water is dangerous. There is no emergency landing, but luckily, Colt was near some islands. So in between the sand and the palm trees, he finds a patch of land, lines up the planes, puts down the flaps, prays to God, and he lands. As the wheels touched the ground, they got stuck in the wet sand, absolutely destroying the aircraft. And it would set off the emergency locator transmitter.
He managed to keep it level somehow. As you can see, the nose is in the grass. He got out of that plane reportedly uninjured and headed into the island.
Because within seconds, it had sent a SOS
he's
signal.
trapped though. He's on an island, buddy. What are you gonna do?
To the U.S. Coast Guards via GPS. And Colt knew he needed to get the hell out of there. Now, when the U.S. Coast Guard received the signal, they contacted the owner of the Cessna 400, Mr. Miller, to see if they actually needed the help in the Bahamas. Was it real? Was it a false alarm? Now, imagine yourself owning a $700,000 plane in Indiana. But today, it's the 4th of July, you're relaxing. But you get a call from the U.S. Coast Guard.
Damn, who that? Who the fuck was that?
Colt knew he needed to get the hell out of there. Now, when the U.S. Coast Guard received the signal, they contacted
Yeah, you just swimming to Florida?
The owner of the Cessna 400, Mr. Miller, to see if they actually needed the help in the Bahamas. Was it real? Was it a false alarm? Now, imagine yourself owning a $700,000 plane because remember when Homeland Security July?
Wait, that could be it. Wait, I don't know how old that is. Yeah, but she's probably older. I don't know. I don't care. It's anything I said.
Relaxing, but you get a call from the U.S. Coast Guards about your plane crashing in the Bahamas. You would be freaked out. Now, this came as a shock.
He's not under my bed.
Because remember when Homeland Security held those meetings with all of the private plane owners, warning them of this kid plane thief? Well, the owner of that plane, Mr. Miller, wasn't there. And after the staff at the hangar confirmed the Cessna 400 wasn't there anymore, the U.S. Coast Guard and Bahamian Defense Force were told the craft was stolen, and most likely it was Colton Harris Moore in the 5th plane he had stolen. Now, within minutes of the crash landing, Colton walked barefoot into the jungle and towards the first site of civilization. Now, he had actually picked a really good time to come to the Bahamas. It was 4th of July weekend. Tourists are everywhere, so a random white kid in the city, it makes sense. So as Colt broke into some cars and some homes, he had survived squatting in the empty vacation homes plastered all across the island. But as the week went on, the military locked down all of the airports. Police were brought in from other islands, and wanted posters were placed all across of Colt's face.
Bahamas police have been searching for the fugitive for days since his stolen plane was found ditched offshore, but he'd been staying a step ahead of the manhunt. Colby Curry said Harris Moore had a beer in his bar Tuesday night.
He just looked like an average guy, just came in to get a drink.
Yo!
Like no one terrifying, look at.
Still, the FBI's wanted poster warns Harris Moore could be dangerous. Bahamas police have promised to intensify their hunt for him.
The island was small, but where else could he go? An island hop away, it was the party on the bluff. Music blasting, tiki torches, cheap liquor, tourists partying all on the harbor. But from the ocean, a boat glides in towards the dock, and a white boy yells, "Did you hear about the plane I crashed?" Music cuts, and a local replies, "Who are you?" "Colton Harris." Holy hell, this was the kid from the wanted posters, armed and dangerous. Stolen planes all over the world. But the local just played it cool. He asked Colt why he was so far from home. Too many cops, so where are your cops? Then the local replied, "Well, we don't really have that many cops." "Well, call them. I'm bored. I want to get chased." And as the man thought it was a joke, started laughing, "Call the cops. I want to get chased for real. Call them." And as the local pulled out his phone, Colt started up his engine and screamed, "I'm gone. Read about me on the internet," and took off towards the bay. And all the locals could think was, what the was that? Now, as Colt was flying across the bay towards the light over at the harbor island filled with hotels and docks, it was the perfect place to go to hide out from the cops, and also maybe to find a better boat. Colt grabbed his pistol, a bag, and sprinted towards the hotel. But then a security guard starts chasing after him. But once the guard saw that pistol, he backed off, realizing he didn't get paid that much. But the guard would call the cops, and he would go back to Colt's boat and made sure to take the keys so Colt couldn't get away. So that call went out to everyone on the island. The police, security guards, armed citizens were searching. Even the military was looking for Colt now. So with the weapons drawn, search teams are combing the island for the next few hours. Police are patrolling all of the harbors. There was no way Colt was gonna get out. At 3:30 a.m., one of the officers walked off of the dock to go to the bathroom. And as he's doing his business, he heard a man run outside, jump in a boat, and take off. God damn it, it was Colt hiding in the bushes, waiting for that perfect moment the entire time. Officers with machine guns and police boats started chasing him out of the bay, but there was no way to actually catch him because the boat that Colt had stolen was fully capable of outrunning the cops, and even better, had a full tank of gas.
GG.
See, while the ocean was quiet, the roar of the engines could be heard all across the island. And as Colt looked back, watching the police lights fade into the horizon, he couldn't help but smirk. But just as the boat starts losing speed, he'd realized he had just hit a sandbar and had beached the boat. He gives it more gas, but it only dug him in even deeper. You see, when Colt was looking at the cops, he had missed the boat's GPS warning of the upcoming sandbar, and now he was stuck. His 2-year-long run comes down to this. And honestly, he froze and held his gun to his head. Now, for minutes with the officers, he refused to put his hands up until Colt fired one shot at the officers and gassed up the boat, hoping to make some last escape. But the police would pepper the side of his boat with 20 rounds all throughout the boat's hull. As the smoke cleared, Colt rose his hands and he was placed in the handcuffs. He was done. Now, what's insane is that the Bahamian police actually captured Colt without anyone getting killed. That wouldn't happen in the US, let's be honest.
No.
Now, Colt was wanted by the FBI, the US Marshals, dozens of police departments, Homeland Security, Canadian Mounties, and the Bahamian government, and they all wanted him to pay for his crimes. But the Bahamian government had their first pick, and man, were they proud of it. Parading Colt around in that perp walk, and with 5 burglaries, 3 boat thefts, possession of a loaded firearm, firing at an officer, that's probably gonna get you a decade at the infamous Bahamian Fox Hill prison, considered one of the worst prisons in the world. But they only had one charge for Colt, and that was not presenting his passport when he entered the country.
Colton Harris Moore was captured Sunday in the Bahamas after a high-speed boat chase with authorities. He was fined $300, which the U.S. Embassy paid and sent back to the U.S.
That nigga's lawyer is Jewish.
Chuckling, so he got a slap on the wrist, basically, so I don't think he's too worried about it. I think he's got some more problems waiting for him in the States, though.
Now, American prosecutors had to wrangle 67 felonies in 3 different countries and wrap it up all into one court case. And honestly, he was looking about 20 to 30 years in prison. Now, Colton had hired one of the most infamous attorneys in the game. The guy that you call when the evidence is stacked against you. John Henry Brown. Never heard of it? Ted Bundy's attorney. Now, they had calculated the restitution for the planes, the cars, the homes, the search operations at a staggering $1.4 million that Colt was gonna pay.
How's he paying this?
Now, remember that whole movie deal he was trying to set up, selling his life story? Well, the courts mandated that to pay back all of the victims, he was gonna sell the rights to his life story for a potential movie to Fox Entertainment for $1 million. And then let's say that the victims are paid back in full one day, he still could never make money from anything about his life story. We're talking books, t-shirts, video games, anything. And while this may seem harsh, the courts wanted it to be known that crime doesn't pay. Now, Attorney Brown's specialty isn't defending the crimes, but rather why they happen. Now, they showed that Colt's home life really was that bad. His mom never fed him, his dad never paid the child support, his mom drank during her pregnancy and diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome, and Colt said he was gonna go to college after this and he was gonna get his life together. And the court felt sympathy for Colt, including the judge, stating, "I think this case is a tragedy, but also a triumph of human spirit. I sympathize with the defendant for his terrible upbringing that he had. It was a tragedy he had to steal food, to endure an alcoholic and abusive mother. But nevertheless, the sentence is 6 years. I wish him well." Now, a decade later and out of prison, we don't know much about Colt, about what he's up to today. Now, from the few interviews he's given, he spoke about hating the moniker the Barefoot Bandit, and he wishes to move on from that. And now, I actually contacted Colt to honestly hear his side of the story. What has he been up to? What is he doing? But I got no response. I called him, emailed him, even visited him in Washington. Friends say that he changed his number and he went off of the grid and no one knows where he's really at.
That's one nigga that knows how to get off the grid. Yo, yo. That's a life. He has a story to tell his kids and shit, bro. That's crazy. I ain't gonna lie, he chilling now. Probably got a bitch off the grid. He chilling, bro. That's fire, bro. 6 years though? What the hell? It took me a year to get you to watch that. I'm so happy. You have it. That was a good video. I'm gonna think about that for the rest of my life.
Said I'm on 3 pills right now, if I'm being honest. Hope my feelings shoot out like a rocket. Niggas thought they had the swag, but I'm really on it. Look at you just window shopping that new bag I bought it.